Chaugnar stirs and heaves its bulk.
H.P. Lovecraft is undeniably one of the most iconic figures in horror, and he has created a fictional universe that inspires horror writers even today. This subgenre of horror, also known as eldritch horror, is characterized by gory, monstrous entities who hold secrets of the universe and often terrorize humanity. Among other creatures, Lovecraft was known for creating the Cthulhu Mythos and the Great Old Ones, which included hordes of monsters with humanoid features and godlike powers. Over time, many writers sought inspiration from his works, and one such example was Frank Belknap Long's novel, The Horror from the Hills. It introduced us to another fascinating yet underrated entity known as Chaugnar Faugn, and today we'll be exploring his origins in greater detail. But before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. What is the Cthulhu Mythos, and who are the Great Old Ones? Before we dive into Chaugnar Faugn, let us briefly explore H.P. Lovecraft's writings and the Cthulhu Mythos in detail. For starters, the mythos consists of cosmic horror themes, similar humanoid monstrous characters, and extraterrestrial or universal settings that serve as the base for all kinds of Lovecraftian stories. August Derleth came up with the term Cthulhu Mythos, while other scholars, such as S.T. Joshi, refer to this world building as Lovecraft Mythos. Robert Price also divided the Cthulhu Mythos into two stages, Cthulhu Mythos proper and Derleth Mythos. The former focuses mainly on Lovecraft's writings, while Derleth Mythos sheds light on the writers who came after him and expanded the universe. The first stage, Cthulhu Mythos proper, also introduced us to writers such as Clark Ashton Smith, Robert E. Howard, Frank Belknap Long, Henry Kuttner, and Robert Bloch, who came together to form the Lovecraft Circle. They were in close correspondence with Lovecraft, who recognized the key features of these writers and helped them work on their unique writing styles. For instance, Robert E. Howard worked closely with Lovecraft for his works, such as The Children of the Night, wherein one of the characters even references Lovecraft's Necronomicon. David E. Schultz later analyzed the Cthulhu Mythos and concluded that Lovecraft did not intend to create such an elaborate universe. Instead, he hoped to create a base that served as a background element on which other stories could be developed. One key background element in Lovecraft's writings involves the Great Old Ones, who can be best described as ancient creatures who originated in the distant past of the cosmos. While all the Great Old Ones have their individualistic powers and characteristics, they share traits such as originating from the fabric of the cosmos or showing no mercy or regard for humanity. They also notably drove lesser beings to insanity upon interacting with them, and they were known for their hostility to the mortal population. Most of the Great Old Ones were worshipped as gods or leaders of cults, which were driven by mass populations that hoped to free these gods from imprisonment and spread their influence. However, these cults had limited knowledge about the true nature of the Great Old Ones, as they typically limited their interactions with the mortal world and maintained a mysterious persona. What is Chaugnar Faugn? While pop culture is filled with numerous Great Old Ones, Chaugnar Faugn remains one of the most underrated godlike entities that belonged to this sect. It was created by Frank Belknap Long in his novel The Horror from the Hills, and it had a vampiric elephant-like humanoid appearance. Chaugnar Faughn's appearance was enough to send shivers down one's spine, as its trunk tapered off in a leech-like mouth that allowed it to drain its victim's blood in no time. It also earned the nickname The Feeder due to its vampiric tendencies, and it had supposedly originated in a higher dimension. About 2 billion years ago, Faugn abandoned its glowing cone at the end of a crater and made its way to Earth in a bipedal reptilian form. Before this, it had a different appearance, with ropey arms that extended all the way to the ends of the crater and allowed it to suck off the nutrients from the pools of lava that had gathered at the bottom. However, it changed its form upon its arrival on Earth, and then used the leech-like openings on the end of its trunks to suck its prey's blood and ensure that it had a nutritious diet. Its skin was made up of a strange material that resembled stone more than any organic or mineral-like substances, and it could often pass off as a statue by freezing in one spot. Chaugnar Faugn could also be identified by its webbed ears, human-like hands, and interlocked tusks that were translucent and crystalline in nature. While these features made it easy to identify Faugn, it was more challenging than it sounds, since it could change its size rise and even become less solid as it grew taller. In this way, its appearance kept changing at all times, and its actual form was unpredictable to humans. It was identified as a hyperdimensional creature whose body gave off a phosphorescent glow, and its body parts were known as the Brothers of Chaugnar Faugn. While these parts could operate on their own, they linked together to form Chaugnar and used processes such as thought transference to communicate with the entity as a whole. These parts had their own mental capabilities, and they sometimes even disagreed with Chaugnar Faugn as a whole. While humans could not accurately perceive their form, they often saw Chaugnar and its brothers in the form of telepathic messages and dreams. Most humans went through their entire lives without facing this monstrous entity, but there were a few unlucky souls who died a cruel death at its hands. Faugn not only sucked the blood out of its victims, but also mutilated them, destroyed their faces, and left behind an unrecognizable corpse. In some cases, it kept its prey alive to feed on them from time to time and gradually transformed their bodies to a point where their facial features deformed, their ears grew longer, and they eventually formed a telepathic bond with Chaugnar. The point was to influence them with a psychic bond to an extent where Chaugnar could even kill them telepathically. Chaugnar had survived for thousands of years, if not more, and it was capable of withstanding Roger Little's entropy-reversing machine's destructive rays. Even after continued exposure to these rays, Chaugnar did not die and only returned to its native dimension to dodge it. In the present day, Chaugnar's cult is situated on the plateau of Sang and is filled with faceless yellow creatures who worship it alongside humans. They believe that Chaugnar is a part of the universe and that it created the universe by separating itself from it. Moreover, they firmly believe that Chaugnar might be the one to consume the universe in the end and that it will also destroy its brothers in the process. In 1936, the Raja of Jadhur gave his views on the matter and stated that Chaugnar Faugn can be likened to the Hindu god Ganesha, as well as the Sathogwa. The mysterious and sinister Miri Nigri, Chaugnar Faughn's twisted creations. While we've explored how Chaugnar Faugn devours and destroys humans, it's also known for creating new life in the form of the Miri Nigri. Faugn created and ruled over this race of aquatic humanoids who were known as the progenitors of the Chocho people after they decided to create hybrids with humans. The Miri Nigri population stayed with the brothers of Chaugnar Faugn in the Pyrenees, and they were infamous for kidnapping humans to offer them to Faugn. They were essentially created to mold humans as well as other life forms on Earth for Chaugnar Faugn and can be described as organic beings with no will of their own. Their sole purpose was to follow Faugn, who supposedly derived them from toads or swarms of plankton, but there's no concrete theory that describes their origins. Chaugnar Faugn beyond the mythos. There are many mythological theories behind Chaugnar Faughn's existence, wherein it's most commonly depicted as an anthropomorphic elephant. However, Frank Belknap Long describes it as a reptilian creation that somewhat resembles an elephant, along with some other features that make it appear as a humanoid. George Olszewski was known for naming most of the non-convex snub polyhedra after the Great Old Ones, and he even named the snub dodecahedron after Chaugnar Faugn. Faugn is also believed to be one of the two deities who created the universe, but there is no evidence of this in the Cthulhu Mythos, and its cultists probably created this theory out of thin air. Marvelous verdict. And with that, we conclude our deep dive into Chaugnar Faugn, one of the most underrated Great Old Ones in the Cthulhu Mythos. There's no doubt that Frank Belknap Long has created a fascinating creature here, and Faughn's origins and deceptive appearance further make it an intriguing character among other ancient deities. We hope you enjoyed exploring its history with us, and we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one, and be safe. Thanks, everyone.